Biden administration describe you in the United States in the media as a fascist. Are you worried about being crushed by the United States?
It's dangerous, may I say. I'm not the favorite politicians of the liberals, unfortunately, but nobody is perfect, you know. There are certain things which are more important than me, than my ego. Family, nation, God. Liberal originally meant freedom, but now in Europe, liberal means that you are enemy of the freedom. We are ally to the United States, and we are worse treated than the Russians.
If you respect democracy, don't you let countries govern themselves? If you take a step back, the point of NATO is to provoke a war with Russia.
This is a bad strategy. We have to stop it. We cannot beat them. They will not kill their leader. They will never give it up. They will invest more. It's a joke. It's a very dangerous moment now.
That's obvious to you.
Not just for me, everybody on the street. The Third World War knocking on our door.
You were just in an election. Did you consider at any point just indicting your challenger? Wouldn't that have been easier?
To do what's going on now in your country, you know, to use the justice system against the political opponents. In Hungary, I think it's impossible to imagine. That was done by the communists.
As the war in Ukraine completely reshuffles the world order and threatens to destroy human civilization, it's striking just how little information Americans are receiving about what happens there. The nation of Hungary shares a border with Ukraine. Its leader, Viktor Orban, the nation's longest-serving prime minister, has been dealing with the Russians all of his life. He grew up under Russian occupation. As a young man, he was arrested and thrown into jail by Russian-backed police for his efforts to liberate the country. And as prime minister, he's dealt regularly with Vladimir Putin, whose nation supplies Hungary with most of its energy. Viktor Orban understands Russia and Ukraine. So 2 years after we last spoke to him, we returned to Hungary to sit down with Prime Minister Viktor Orban and ask him what exactly is happening in Ukraine right now. Here's what he said. So in the United States, the view is that Ukraine is winning this war. It doesn't sound like that's true.
No, it's a lie. It's not just a misunderstanding. It's a lie. It's impossible. Everybody who's in politics and understand the logic, the figures, the data, no way.
Why is it impossible?
Because that way, the poor Ukrainians die every day.
Yes.
Hundreds and thousands, you know. So my heart is with them. So it's tragedy. It's tragedy for Ukraine. But they will run out earlier from the soldiers, number of soldiers, than the Russians. What finally will count is boots on the ground. And the Russians are far stronger, far numerous, more numerous
There's more
than
of
Ukrainians.
Them. Many more.
So this strategy, what we are just supporting, is a bad engineering of the strategy. So
if the Biden administration has said our goal is to beat Russia, is to effect regime changes to kill Putin and take him out of power.
You know, they misunderstand probably the Russians. You know, to understand the Russians, it's a difficult thing, especially if you have an ocean between you and Russia. So when we speak about politics, I mean Westerners, what is the focus point of our conversation? The focus point is freedom. How to provide more and more freedom to the people.
Yes.
When you speak on politics in Russia, this is not the number one issue. The number one issue, how to keep together the country, because the country is very big. And there's a privilege of the question how to keep together the country and not freedom. Freedom is just another issue, second, third, whatever. First, keep the country together. And that's generate a different kind of culture and understanding of politics. That's create a kind of military approach like
Yes.
they have. Always on security, safety, buffer zone, geopolitical approaches. It's not our culture, it's a different approach. It's legitimate to have that because it's their history. But we have to understand that we cannot beat them as we do just now. It's impossible. They will not kill their leader. They will never give it up. They will keep together the country and they will defend it. We finance more, they will invest more. If we send more technical equipment, they will produce more. So don't misunderstand the Russians.
So they're not going to get sick of Putin and throw him out?
Come on, it's a joke.
What would happen if the West succeeded in killing Putin? What would happen to Russia and its nuclear stockpiles?
Okay, so okay, may I recall one of my experience?
Yes.
So I was prime minister exactly at the time when the change happened in Russia, Putin after Yeltsin.
Yes.
Yeltsin was very weak and getting weaker and weaker. And I do remember the fear of that time here in Hungary and in Europe as well. whether there will be a new leadership or not. So the real fear here was that there will be an anarchy in Russia.
Yes.
Putin is out and no new guy who is coming in strong enough to keep together the country, the nuclear arsenal and the army control and so on. So everybody was happy when realized that after he had seen Putin come in and started to control the military and the Russian power as a leader. So everybody was happy. I do remember that. So now Putin is in power for long years. We forgot about how dangerous when there is no strong leadership or interregnum in Russia. The interregnum is the worst case possible. So,
but that is our goal. That is the goal of the U.S. State Department.
Yeah, but it's a mistake. If this is the goal, it's a mistake.
It sounds very dangerous.
It's more than dangerous, you know. Okay, if to sit in Washington, safe United States, is a different feeling than to sit here in Budapest. Ukraine is next door country, you know. So what's going on there could have an immediate impact in 24 hours here in Hungary and so on. When I was very young, 86, if I remember well, there was an explosion of the nuclear power station in Ukraine by accident.
Yes.
And it infected us immediately. So if there is an escalation in Ukraine,
Chernobyl polluted.
Chernobyl, yeah, that could have an impact on us immediately. So Washington is far away, Russia and Ukraine is close. That's the Hungarian approach.
So, given the manpower imbalance between the Russian and Ukrainian armies and the attrition of the Ukrainian army, hundreds of thousands dead.
And many Hungarians as well. Nobody knows it. But we have a minority, a strong minority, more than 150,000 people in the territory of Ukraine, which was earlier part of Hungary. So it's a historical minority community living there. They are part of the Ukrainian state, and they are conscripted now to the army. And they die. They fight for Ukraine, and Hungarians, soldiers dying for Ukraine as Ukrainian citizens. So we lost, Hungarian nation, we are losing lives daily as also.
At a certain point, they're going to need more men. They're going to need more soldiers. Where are they going to come from?
That's the most risky question. So if any Western country would send any boots on the ground, that would mean a direct war between the West and Russia. And we are in a third world war immediately. So it's a very dangerous moment now.
That's obvious to you.
Absolutely. Not for me. Everybody on the street. All the ordinary citizens are aware that we are living in a very dangerous moment. So the third world war couldn't knocking on our door. So we have to be very, very careful. And that's my message always to America as well at NATO summit. Be careful with that.
And what kind of response do you get when you say that?
You know, they are bigger, therefore they are more clever. So that's always the case.
So they don't listen to you.
We can say in that way also, yeah.
I have to ask you about Nord Stream. So it seems very obvious that the Biden administration blew up Nord Stream, either directly or through proxies. I've never heard anyone dispute that, really. How is Western Europe, and Germany in particular, the biggest NATO member in Europe, not saying anything about this? It seemed, that just crushed the German economy. Why don't they say a word about it?
So when it has happened, we commented it as a terrorist attack.
Yes.
It was rejected in Germany and in the West. It was not a terrorist attack. It was something, you know. So that's a kind of evidence of lack of sovereignty. But it's the job of the Germans. I would not like to criticize them. What we Hungarians did immediately, we made clear that there is another pipeline, not just Nordic Stream, but there is a southern stream, coming gas from Russia through the southern corridor. Turkey, Bulgaria, Serbia, Hungary. And together with the Serbian Prime Minister, President, we did very clear that if anybody would like to do the same thing with the southern corridor as it was done with the northern one, we consider it as a reason for war or terrorist attack, and we will immediately react. So don't do that. Probably you can do it with the Germans, but you can't do that with this region. That was very much clear.
Do you think people understand that?
I think so.
You were not speaking to the Russians when you said that.
On that subject.
Yes.
It's a Hungarian issue, it's not a Russian issue.
Right, but when you said to the world, don't commit an act of terror against this pipeline. You weren't speaking.
It was not addressed to Moscow. No.
No, it was not. Right. So if you were in charge of NATO, if you were, say, Joe Biden, what would your next move be in the war in Ukraine? What would you do?
Peace immediately. Call back Trump. That's the only way out.
Call back Trump.
Call back Trump, because you can criticize him for many reasons. I understand all the discussion, but the best foreign policy of the recent several decades belonged to him. He did not initiate any new war.
Yes.
He treated nicely the North Koreans and Russia, even the Chinese. He delivered a policy which was the best one for Middle East, Abraham Accords.
Yes.
So that was a very good foreign policy. He's criticized that he's not educated enough to understand the world. This is not the case. Facts count, and his foreign policy was the best one for the world in the last several decades I have seen. And if he would have been the president at the moment of the Russian invasion started, no, it would be not possible to do that by the Russians. So Trump is the man who can save the Western world and probably the human beings in the globe as well. That's my personal conviction.
Can I ask you, just to skip around for 1 second, about the Russian invasion of Ukraine? Days before that invasion at the Munich Security Conference, the Vice President of the United States, Kamala Harris, said to Zelensky at a press briefing, we would like Ukraine to join NATO. Now, Ukraine joining NATO obviously cannot, is a...
It's a long story. When the idea of membership of Ukraine, NATO, was raised, it was in the summit of NATO, Bucharest, 2007 or 8. Russia was not strong enough to stop it. So there was a real chance at that time to integrate the Ukrainians into NATO. But it was rejected. There was no agreement among the big Western countries to do so, so it was postponed. But after 2 or 3 years later, the Russians became stronger and stronger and stronger. And now they are even stronger. So we missed the historical opportunity to do so. And this window of opportunity is not open anymore. So we can't do that. So we can't afford to have that long borderline between Russia and Ukraine, who belongs to NATO. That would mean immediate war danger to all of us, even in Washington. So it's dangerous even for the United States. It's not just dangerous for the region, but even for you, for the families.
Because it could provoke a nuclear exchange.
So it's not a realistic proposal at this moment. So forget about it. We should say just the opposite. We should make a deal with the Russians on the new security architecture to provide security, sovereignty for Ukraine, but not membership in NATO.
So why, and that I think your view is shared by many sober people who watch this, so why would the vice president say something like that at a moment when there were Russian troops massed on the Ukrainian border?
It's difficult to follow the mindset of a big power like you are. So it's a different approach to everything than the approach of 10 million people of Hungary with the historical experience, knowing the Russians better than you know. You always think that you know better because of the Cold War, but it's not the case.
They never occupied Washington.
Yeah. You should ask us. How does it work? What is the way of thinking? What is the cultural context?